and welcome. You're tuning in to Unbreakable Hope with me, your host, Jessica Rose. This podcast is all about seeking the light. In each episode, we chat with someone who has either overcome the darkness or who is actively spreading light within their own community. So let's jump into today's episode. Today, I am absolutely honored to be introducing you to my amazing guest. Aaron has, wow, a beautiful, beautiful story that is filled with a lot of love and loss and overcoming. And just reading his bio, it is hard to summarize the things that this man has been through and these things that he has overcome. So I hope you're ready to buckle in for a heart-wrenching story. We're going to be talking about military life, and we are also going to be talking about the loss of a loved one to suicide. So please stick with us and hear from Aaron as he shares his story. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing with us your story. I'm so excited to have you.
Hey, it's great to be here. I'm excited to share
Well, I'd love to give you a few moments so you can introduce yourself a bit more to our audience, tell them more about yourself, and maybe jump into your story some.
it. Sure. So I'm not originally from Oklahoma. I moved here my senior year in high school, and I went to Edmond Memorial, played football there. I enjoyed it. They after football, I actually wanted to become a Marine, and that was actually my plan. But then life happens, and it didn't work out in the sense that my girlfriend at the time, who I would end up marrying and then later on divorced, she just wasn't going to go with me. And so I was like, well, how about I join some service? And it went back and forth. I finally was like, I'll join the Guard. They don't go anywhere. They haven't been anywhere since Korea. And so that was my convincing story. And so she said, okay. I found myself 2 years later in Bosnia. So yes, they do deploy. And it was, yeah, it hadn't been since Korea, but that's, too bad, we're going. So I ended up doing a tour over there, and it was awesome. I loved Bosnia. It's just a beautiful country. It really is. Even though it was war torn, it was pretty cool. And just the biggest thing was I didn't realize this, but the National Guard, the biggest benefit is that not just that we deploy overseas, but we get all the state activations. So, my very first activation in '99 was with the May 3rd tornado that ripped more like clean out, and then hopped over to Minko and finished them off. That's where I got to go, like right out of the chute. And so, reporting and going to natural disasters became more rewarding for not only me, but like the guys that I served with, because we were helping fellow Americans, we were helping Oklahomans. And so those activations that were, sometimes really bad timing, but those I actually really enjoyed more, because I was with our own people in their communities, and I got to see like, oh, they really do appreciate what we're doing here, And then I went again when 9/11 happened, and I was on airport security, and I got to see that at Will Rogers. And then Katrina, I was down there in Katrina for a month. And then I finished off my last one with Houston when we were down there in Hurricane Harvey. So I've done it 4 times, and I really like those deployments versus my overseas deployments, because it was like two different animals. And so that was something that I really hold close to me, is those times I got to actually stay here and help, because they deploy you so quickly that it's rapid, and you get to really see the ins and outs of how the Guard operates versus active duty, because they very rarely use them for that. And so I ended up appreciating those times that I did go to help people that I like. Oh, we had help people that, hey, can you go down there? My uncle lives down there. Like, oh yeah, tell me their street. We'll just go swing by. And sure enough, we're in there helping someone that they would have never known if they were okay or not, if it wasn't for us actually physically being there. So, and I've got stories on stories about Katrina. That place was like the Wild West show when we got there, and we were there day 3. So we really got to see the ins and outs of it. So when right before the passing of my wife, I went down to Harvey down in Houston, and it was amazing. Like just the overpouring of love, respect, and gratitude of you being there. I've never hugged so many people than I had when I was down there in Houston. It was a fantastic experience to hand out ice and just the little things. And they're getting out of their cars and they're hugging you for long periods of time and telling you their life story and just hey, when you get back to Oklahoma, send me your email. Like we need to get back together. And that happened a lot. So that part I really enjoyed. So and that's when my wife and I had just started like dating. So she's down, I'm down there, and she's like we're going back and forth and just seeing like how this is going to work because you have two military, both of us on active duty status, and you have a big blended family, which is like we did. We had, I have three sons and she had two daughters. There is a lot going on for that. And as soon as I got back, then she ends up getting activated to go overseas to Afghanistan. So then that's when everything started changing for the the ride of a lifetime because I have never worked so hard in just trying to stay afloat. It was like building a plane in flight. And so it was every night was a logistical, like going through my entire steps of operations orders. And that's just to get me to, 3 o'clock. And so, yeah, it was a very unexpected because the roles completely reversed. So, but man, I loved the Army. They did me right. I've met so many amazing people. So I have nothing to truly complain about.
That's amazing. I think there's a lot of people when they leave their military career, sometimes they don't have the best experience and they're almost bitter about it. And you bring up a lot of really great points about when I started working for the National Guard, I would my mind was really opened to a lot of the differences from active duty to what the Guard benefits, all the different things. And at one point, they had said that the Oklahoma Army National Guard had actually deployed more than the active duty Army, which
Mhm.
was just it's insane when you think about it. So as you're saying,
Yeah.
I'll join the Guard, I won't go anywhere 2 years later. Just kidding. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
We call it the grinder. There for right when everything started kicking off, because so many of us were rotating. We get home and it'd be, hey, I got another one coming up. You guys want to go? And a lot of guys, when they join, they're like, well, that's why I joined, so I can get in the mix. And so we were turning over guys so quick, and there for a minute, and we were grinding them down to nothing because every time you come back, a part of you doesn't, and then it just keeps adding on. And so by the time they do, and they may have had, I have guys that were E4s, 5 tours, and this is all their first 6 years in the guard. But every bit of that, as soon as they got out, that's where all the problems started, and it was bad. And so we there for a while, we just called it the grinder because it was grinding everybody down.
that's a great example. I have a buddy when I was selected duty in the Marine Corps. He had gone through a pretty rough divorce, so signed up for the next deployment, volunteered for it, and then he just kept doing it, kept doing it, kept doing it. That was his way of escaping everything that had happened here in the US was just, I'm just going to be over there. I'm going to be over there. I'm going to be over there. I've already lost everything. So what's the point? And
Yep.
yeah, he went on to basically that became his full-time life, even outside of the military, took on a particular job that continues to do things like that, shall we say. And still worried about him. As long as I was able to communicate with him, I was just like, man, it's wild, but you're right. You do that and you keep going, you keep going, you keep going, and then by the time you've settled, it's like I'm a workaholic. I love working. I'm always busy, run, run, run. So the moment I sit down, I'm like, ugh, gross. I have
Yep.
to be with like my own thoughts and everything has to just kind of pile in. No, I'm good. Give me something else to do.
And that right there, what you said is exactly the one of the problems that we have is, we keep there's always another mission, there's always another task, there's always another assignment, there's always something going on, and so we're constantly moving to the next objective, the next checkpoint. But the problem with it is a lot of us aren't ready to address the new one because we haven't even addressed the last two that we've been through, and we just keep going. And that was something that I figured out because when after my wife's death, they were just kind of like, so are you ready to come back to work? And I was, well, I mean, sure. And, when you go back into it, you immediately have to compartmentalize your feelings and your issues because they're like, yeah, we understand you went through something, but we have another task, we have another assignment, we have another mission, and you never get that chance to go back and address it. So you compartmentalize all your feelings about anything because you're like, well, when I have time, I'll do it. But for now, it needs to be in a box underneath my bed with lock and key. And and hopefully sometime soon I'll address it. But as we both know, hope is not a course of action. And so anytime we say that, we're like, well, I hope things get better. I hope, no, that's not a course of action. So it's not going to get better. It's not going to fix itself. It's going to stay broke. It's almost like saying, oh, my car's making this really loud noise. I'm just going to turn the music up so I don't have to deal with it. And that's exactly what we do. We just go, well, once I get past this one, I'll be good. And then you get to that one, you're like, well, now I got to go to another one. And then you go to another one. And as soon as you start completing missions, your leadership immediately goes, oh, he's good. He's good. No, he's solid. He's doing everything where you need him. He's not fading. He's not showing any signs of needing off. He's solid. And they're not even asking. They're just, it's a lot of assumptions that no, if he had something, he'd tell us. He's a senior. Senior guys, they'll tell you. No, we won't. No, we won't tell him. We won't say anything. And a lot of times it looks as weakness. Like, well, I'm a senior leader. I should know how to handle this. I've done multiple briefings. I've been through multiple training events. This should be no problem. And it's all fun and games. And what is it? Mike Tyson said that everyone's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth.
Mm.
And that is absolutely an accurate statement because when I got hit in the mouth, I not only did I not know what I was doing, I mean, just finding my wife complete like I just like completely went like flatlined because I had no idea how to deal with this. Like I was like, it's one thing to be training to help a soldier that's bleeding out on the battlefield, but when it's your own wife with your kids in the house and multiple things happening simultaneously, all your training has zero bearing whatsoever. And a lot of that, I mean, there for a second, everything was just no sound. Like that scene with Saving Private Ryan where Tom Hanks, he's on the water and he's getting hit, but he can't hear nothing because he's trying to process what is going on. And that's exactly what I experienced when I found my wife. I just sat there for a minute, like, I'm not sure what I am looking at. Like this doesn't make any sense. And then when it comes back, like when you start to figure out, okay, wait a minute, okay, this is a real event. Everything goes NASCAR. It is like flying hey, my house is on fire. There's bees. There's a flood coming. I mean, it's all at once. And so it didn't matter how much years of training and how many completed missions I had before that. It meant nothing when that moment hit. And and then after that, it never got any better. It just I completely faked it. I did everything that a lot of us will do and pretend there's nothing going on. Yeah, I absolutely did that, and it not only did it make things worse, it complicated my life four more times than I could imagine, and it took me getting out to start to actually truly heal.
One of the frustrating parts that I experience too, and obviously our situations are very different, but I'm grieving someone who is still alive in their condition, and you're grieving someone who has lost, and people don't really understand grief. There's this whole idea of like you go through stages and there's a timeline and oh yeah, look, he's doing great. He's performing well. Oh, she's smiling, this and this and that. That doesn't mean that the grief is still there. I
Oh
refer to
yeah,
it as grief cycles when things trigger it or something happens. My husband has a dip in health and it's like another grief cycle to go through. Anything can cause that triggering.
yeah,
And in your situation, you have children that also rely on you. So you're talking about you're in a leadership position, right? You have
yep,
that I should know what to do, but I don't because it's too close to you. Once it's you, it's different. You
It
know,
is.
it's your family, it's different. And now you have your kids to take care of, your wife's kids, which obviously that relationship dynamic also changed, unfortunately, too. So you had a lot of loss that you had to experience at once.
Yes. And like, because it happened at the house, that part of me like completely stopped. I couldn't even make it to the door. So after that, just, I was having to have send people into my house to just get some of my stuff or the kids' stuff because I could physically feel myself getting ill as I got closer to the house, and just trying to get out of the car, I couldn't do it. And so I never stepped foot back into the house ever again. And we had just bought the house. We were living out in Norman, and I took a massive hit when I finally like clicked on and said, okay, I'm going to sell the house. We had only had such a short time, so I took a massive hit just trying to get it back on the market. And I had to take the word of strangers coming into my house saying, hey, you need to fix this or fix that. I was like, okay, I guess so, because I have no idea. I haven't been up there. And you trust people to do the right thing, and they 100% will take advantage of you. I had two or three contractors that absolutely did not do what they were supposed to do. I couldn't even find them. And you tell these people how like going through a loss, and they're like, oh man, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I got you, and then as soon as you pay them, they are gone. And I took the money that they give you, which it is a lot of money when you look at it, you see the numbers, and once it goes in your account, it's yours. But you can burn through that so fast trying to not only get yourself caught up, maybe pay a couple of things off, but then you have friends and family that come out of nowhere and go, I'm kind of taking a hit too, brother. You think I have many, many good friends that I unfortunately do not talk to anymore that ask for money. I didn't hesitate, and to this day, I don't talk to them anymore. And there's a zero chance that any of that will ever come back. And they fully knew where it came from, and it hasn't dawned on them that maybe I should start at all. So that rolls into your families. And another ugly part of death is when you've been married a short amount of time, and their families, everyone likes each other until there's a dollar sign. And then everything changes. Then all of a sudden, you know what? I don't trust you. I don't like what you did here. What do you mean? What does that mean? Like, then it was accusations, and then you've got family going, we don't get anything. And you're like, I didn't sign that as document. It wasn't my choice. And they're like, well, oh, so you did it because that's why, there was accusations that everything was malicious and with malice. I was like, they knew us, and we were 100% committed to each other. We didn't even fight. And so to even have someone say that was just like, really? Where have you been? These are the same people that a week ago were like, I'm jealous of your guys' relationship. You guys are, you guys are just absolutely amazing. And you're like, oh, thank you, And then all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, I don't get anything. What were you expecting to get? I don't know. Well, I wanted some of her jewelry, and you're like, what? No, no, I'm not giving. What, are you crazy? I had the biggest fight over her ring, and I was like, that was I bought that ring, and they're like, well, it's only fair that we get something, and I'm like, it's not. No, no, no. I don't know what fair is in your world, but I can tell you what isn't, and that's anything that's in that house. No, I'm not giving you anything, and so a lot of it, like it got real ugly there for a minute, and so for several months, I'm battling family members over the most dumbest items that I'm like, I don't even know why we're having this conversation. This is ridiculous. It really was. And so, yeah, that just compounded things even more, because you think you're going to have this circle of family and friends, and for a brief moment they are there for until a couple of weeks after they put them in the ground, and everything kind of the dust settles, and then all of a sudden it starts. Now we start drawing lines, and we start line out the chalk line to see, okay, well, what happens if, well, I did this, and so I kind of should have it. And you're like, no, I don't know where you're coming up with that. And that absolutely happened. So the first 2 years after her death, there was a lot of back and forth, childish fights over some of the most ridiculous items that I had in possession. So yeah, and then you just add going back to work. Absolutely, it was extremely rough there those first couple of years because I didn't know like what was my left and right limit. Because I'm a senior NCO, what do I do? What do I say? Because they don't, it's almost like uncharted territory when, because a lot of times when the spouse dies, or the spouse that they're not dealing with the spouse, they have that brief moment where they send the casualty assistance officer into the house, and they kind of like answer a few questions, but then they're not seeing them at work. That was a completely different ball game for them, having me physically there, because it's real hard to tell me one thing when I know the process. Like I've been trained. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's not how that works, and you're telling a full bird colonel across the table that no, that's complete crap, sir. And I absolutely had a couple of moments where I'm telling an '06 that he can pound sand. And that is something I've never done. It never once crossed my mind to burn an officer for saying something. But yeah, I started holding him in a completely different standard for a while before I reined myself back in.
And you've had a huge experience with a lot of the differences that we see. So both you and your wife were well, I say active duty, but you were both serving in the military and were activated multiple times. And while she deployed, you were the father at home, and then you lose her, and then you're still working. So then there's this, they're not used to that. They don't know what to do, they don't know what to say. You're going through a lot and you're just doing the best you can with what you have, and everyone else is kind of, I say all the time that it's better to say something or do something than nothing at all. And I don't know if you experience this. I mean, obviously you shared that, you've experienced a whole lot of loss in this, right? So now you're talking about loss of support system, loss of friends, because people just, it it drives me crazy to hear stuff like this, because I have a hard time accepting that a human can be naturally evil in those circumstances. And that's just evil, the things that people have done to you. And so you not only lost all of that, but did you ever have anybody, uh, uh, people feel like doing something is like, oh, I don't want to get in your way, or I don't want to do something and you not be okay with it. So when it comes to people wanting to help out, I say like initiative is not intrusive.
Mm-hmm.
When you lose somebody, did you ever have anybody that said, "Hey, like there's normally a meal train, right, that goes around, but maybe that only lasts for a week or two." But even after that, was there anybody or any groups that you saw that were just taking initiative to say, "Hey, here's something," or did you feel a lot of that like standoffish, stand back, I don't want to be intrusive?
Absolutely. So yeah, I didn't have any groups like after we put her in the ground. There was no one that came forward. Like the phone calls, they fade away. The getting the food, I didn't get any more food or anything after her death, after we buried her. That completely stopped. Work, they just stopped like saying anything. Like it became one of those like is, hey, don't talk to Aaron. He's a little, he lost his wife, and but then like there's nothing else. So there was like this odd silence like in a meeting or talking because they don't know what to say, and so they don't say anything. And there's awkward moments where they like I literally had someone reach their hand up, and when they tapped my shoulder, it was one of those like so awkward that I was like, I don't even, why did you touch me? Like it was like because he was so uncomfortable with the whole like what happened, that he was just like, hi, I'm sorry. Like it was really awkward. I was like, I could have really done without that. I don't know why you even. And that's a lot of it. In the military, we talk about having empathy because that is such a key component of being a good leader. And that word is thrown around so loosely, and they will try to portray that, oh, we are very sympathetic to this situation, and I was like, no, no, I can show you where you did where you weren't, and they're like, well, policy also dictates how we, like, no, no, you're human. There is policy has nothing to do with just under, it's like going, hey man, this guy's been through some stuff. What do you think we could, do to help him out? And like, I'd make a request. I need a transfer, not because I don't like the unit I'm in, but that's where I met her, was at that office in Norman. I'm having too many triggers. Can I go somewhere else? And at the time they were like, where would you want to go? And I go, I don't really care. And they're like, well, you're an E8, and you're MOS. It's kind of, there's only so many places we can put you. And I was like, how about anywhere but not this building? And they, well, let me take it up the chain and I'll get back to you. And I was like, well, I'm going to be in my car in the parking lot if you need me. And this is before pre-COVID. So pre-COVID, working from home was never an option. COVID absolutely opened the door that allowed us to actually work from home and then actually show that we were productive from home. But until that point, you better be there at 0630, and you better have a uniform, and you better have those reports ready. And there was no like, well, maybe you need some more time, because they asked me at the time, the regulation hadn't changed yet. So policy was, you can get a 4-day pass. And then if you want to take any days, you have to take your ordinary leave. So I only had about 3 weeks of leave at the time, because I wasn't like I was planning this, and so they gave me the 4 days right before her death. And my leave started the day after, on Sunday. And when I ran out of leave, I had zero choice. I was like, well, I guess I'm coming to work. And they're like, okay, Tuesday, time changed. You can be in at 7:30. And that was the conversation I had. And I was like, right now the policy, if a soldier has a child, both parents get 12 weeks of paid leave, and it is uncharged. 12 weeks, because their environment has changed, their family dynamic has changed. But when you lose somebody, your family dynamic changes, 100% changes. And there is a lot more involved in, when you lose somebody versus gain somebody. There is more help when you gain somebody, from family, friends, and coworkers. But when you lose somebody, people just don't know what to do, and so they do nothing. And so, getting to be charged my leave, I ran out of leave very quickly. And when you do block leave, you get charged for weekends, and you get charged for, the days that you're normally off. And so 3 weeks later, I'm back at work in the same office, same building, same floor. Her office was down the hall, and they actually forgot to even pull all her stuff off and put it in a box for me. So I walk in, and I just look over, and there's all her stuff, and her nameplate's still on the wall, and the pictures of the family are on the desk. And I was like, I had to ask my supervisor, can you send someone in there and pull that down, because it's messing me up having to walk by it. And they were like, oh yeah, we'll take care of that, sorry. And so I was like, oh man, you guys are really, really hit me where it hurts, man. So yeah, I was bitter, and I know it may sound like I am. Now I just do it as a way to show, like, hey, don't do that again. Like, I'll go to the CNO and the CNO briefings, like training, and I go as a survivor panel. And they always cringe when I show up, because they are like, oh, here comes Aaron. This guy's going to tell it how it is. And they don't like being out to be these, because they spend the whole week saying, hey, we're taking care of our families, we're taking care of our soldiers. Don't you? And then they get to Friday, and then I show up and I'm like, well, that didn't happen. Nope, that wasn't true. And so there's a lot of like cringing when I walk in the door. And there has been times that they actually complained. They're like, I don't know if he should be coming back. Like some of the senior officers that go through the training, because they're like, I know his leadership, and they get all kind of twisted about it. But I try to shoot them straight, like, hey, you either want to help him or you don't. And the things I'm going to tell you, are not going to be as pretty. But there was great times when they did something, and I was like, there it is, kudos. That's there it is, like that. You nailed it. You nailed it. And that absolutely did happen. So I don't want to try to paint out this organization as, but yeah, they had their moments where I was like, ooh, man, that didn't. Now you were way off. He was just a bit outside on that one. And then there's times that they were like, I was like, there it is. Thanks, brother. So, but yeah,
I
I know
think with a
exactly.
lot of losses, we see that, and it goes back to, and people are just too afraid to do anything. And I think it's kind of a reoccurring theme as I have these conversations with people. We make so many topics taboo. I mean, suicide, big taboo topic. Overdoses, suicide, like big taboo topic. But death in general. I know
Yeah.
when my husband first had his first brain tumor was in 2009. I met him after he did all of his rehab and stuff. And he had told me, he said, you know what? Life is a terminal illness. You're born and then you die. You're not guaranteed anything. And it was interesting he'd say that. I'm like, wow, what a perspective. And really having to live through that and see it when his cancer came back the second time. And the more I talk to people who have lost somebody, I remember I talked to a suicide loss survivor. It was a mother, her son had passed from suicide. And she had told me a story about how, yeah, this was before my husband got sick, and it's just stuck with me ever since. She said, people kept telling me, hey, give me a call if you need anything. And she
Mm-hmm.
said, my mind would go to, how can I call you if I'm sitting on the couch? My phone's
Mm-hmm.
not there. I can't call you. And she said that when, unfortunately, she had another death in her family. So she called her sister and she said, hey, there's going to be a lawn guy there on Thursday or whatever it was, right? And she said, don't worry about it for the rest of the season. So that stuck with me. I had a dear friend of mine and she lost her son. So she was actually also in the National Guard. She lost her son to an overdose and it just instantly made me think of that moment with Tyler's mom and I thought, oh my God. So I just sent her a text and I did the same thing. I thought, okay. So I called my lawn guy and said, hey, can you add this address to your schedule and just bill me for it? And I just texted her and said, hey, don't worry about your lawn for the rest of the season. And of course, it was only like a month or two left of the season. It was coming to
Sure.
an end, but I just thought it's something. I don't know what to do, but it's something.
Yeah.
And I know I've greatly appreciated just even the gift cards. I'll have people Venmo me 25 bucks and say, go get your Starbucks and your cake pop, and people may think that's not something, but it's those little things that are their world. It's the things like I'm still seen, I'm still heard. And
Mm-hmm.
for you, like, yes, your wife is passed, but you still have to live on. And there's
Yeah.
things that we all could be doing to support that. And when it comes to suicide, I tell this to people all the time when they're doing interventions, they're too scared to ask someone if they're thinking about suicide. I'm like, yeah, well, think of how scary it is for the person who's going through that. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're too scared to step it up for someone that you know has experienced a loss, then think of how scary it is for the person experiencing the loss.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, 100%. It it just saying that, is you could have been more spot on when it comes to anything that you can do, like lawn service or drop off a case of water, or like, hey, I've got to, and this is something I do with my sons. We have a mobile detailing company that we come to your house and we'll detail your car. And so one of my new wife's one of her soldiers lost her mother. And so before she lost, I said, hey, I'm going to come by and detail your car. And she was like, uh, okay, you win. And I was like, I'll be there today, don't worry about it. And I've detailed her car probably, I think, 4 times now. And not and I just tell her, hey, you come in to drill, and she'd be like, yeah, I'm coming to drill. I was like, give me your keys. And she's like, you're going to detail my car? I'm like, yeah. And so it's been a while. Her mom's been dead for a little bit, but I still detail her car, not because and I get nothing. I don't get. She doesn't pay me. She's tried to pay me, and I won't take it. But yeah, I'll show up at about 08. I pick it up and I bring it back before she gets off. I've never charged her for it, and she's always been very grateful. But I'll every about 3 or 4 months I'll reach out to her and just go, hey, and that's why, and I do it because I may not have a lot, but I do know that a random act of kindness goes a very long way, especially after a loss. So I've been doing that for, like I said, for the past year, and I have no intention of stopping. And I know what it's like to lose somebody. So if you could take at least one burden off of them, even if it's something they didn't realize was a burden, you'd be surprised how far that goes. So yeah, so I've detailed several times, not just her. I've detailed a couple others that had dealt with loss, and I do those myself. I will personally make sure that they get done, and I don't like to send my sons to do that kind of stuff because they need the money for to survive. That's not something. Whereas I'm like, no, I want to do this because it's the right thing to do. So yeah,
Yeah, I think it's things that people don't think about. Again, like grief does not have a timeline. My ice skating coach, she lost her husband, and I said the same thing to her, like checking in on her, like, grief, there is no timeline. There's things that will trigger it for the rest of your life, unfortunately. And that's the part of any loss that we experience, but the loss of a spouse is it's a very unique loss. I mean, all losses are unique in their own manner, right? But it's something that even just thinking about, like with my husband, when he has another dip in health, I'm like, oh, great, here we go. Am I ready? And I get this extra unique experience. I'm like stuck on that word right now, but I get this extra unique experience that I'm living knowing that my husband will die. When? I don't know. He'll probably outlive me, because God's a funny man. But that's something that I get that experience, but it is an experience that comes with drawbacks to where I have to constantly like prepare myself for the grief, prepare myself for the future, not really being able to plan for one future, planning for both. And now you've not only lost your present, you've lost that future. And being able to give back in the simplest of ways it's so it's such a loving feeling. Like for me, my husband's not able to do anything. He's wheelchair bound. He can't talk. So when something breaks in the house, guess who's got to fix it? Guess who has to do the lawn? Guess who has to do all the things that he used to do on top of all the things that I do? So when there is that moment where somebody's just like, "Hey, I'll take care of this for you," or I'll give you a deal just to help you out. I love that. I also hate like on the second side of that, where you've experienced some of this is because you have a loss. Now it's all of a sudden like, oh, I don't want to be around you, or I want to avoid you, or people taking advantage of you because you've experienced this loss. Like that's where, they say there's a special place in hell for some people, right?
and they do. You find yourself in this like this medium, this in the middle kind of space where they don't know which way to go with you, and just, hey, you know what? Just talking to me would be, better than nothing, or reaching out to me. When she died, I had very few of my senior leaders reach out to me. What I got was all my lower enlisted reached out to me. I'm E4s, E3s that would have been scared to reach out to an E8, decided, well, I'm just going to check on top anyway. And so I'd get a text and I'm like, who is this? And then, oh, this is specialist, Ross. I'm like, whoa, how's it going? He's like, I'm just checking on you, top. I'm not trying to bother you. And I'm like, okay, that went a long way. And in my senior leadership, they were like, well, if you need something, he'll reach out. No, we won't. Why do I want to reach out? Why would I want to reach out to you? I don't even want to reach up to pull myself up off the ground. You think I'm going to reach out and call you or text you about what? What is it you think I'm going to, show you a sign of weakness or show you that I'm not going through something, I'm going through a tough time? Then what? Like then they start questioning, well, I don't know how stable he is, and I don't know if we can take him on a mission, or maybe he's not ready for that next promotion. Or I don't think we should send him to the academy because, who knows? Who knows what he's going through, and if he has a bad day, then I can't rely on him to be there, because I don't know what his mental state is. And you start using your mental, you start going in and doing your mental therapy like they tell you to, and that's a double-edged sword because now they're like, well, he's going to therapy a lot. What is he mission effective or is he ineffective? Because he's got to go, he's going twice a week, and so now I'm not sure if he can handle it. I don't know if he can handle the stress. And you're like, I'm just fine. That's, when I first came back and I asked to go to the Sergeant Major Academy, and they were like, yeah, I don't know, man. That's a lot of extra work, plus your AGR. And I was like, well, while you're waiting, I'm going to go back to school. And so and that just came up out of like, which direction do I go? Like, I need something to get me going. I need a goal. I need an endpoint so that I can achieve that endpoint and then establish a new goal. And so, my kids were like, remember when you guys were talking about you'd go back to school, and when she got back from this deployment, and I was like, yeah, we did talk about that. And that was a plan. I thought about it and I was like, if I can just do one thing that we planned on doing, then it'll feel like we completed it together. Like I actually did something that we had planned on, even if it was a trip or something, at least I can say we did it. And that was part of the plan. So that's exactly why I went to OU. Her and I were diehard OU fans. We lived right down the street from the stadium. It was something. And so I said, I'm going to try it. And I'll be damned if I didn't get in, and then I start just cranking away. And those papers helped me like refocus and reset. And I started seeing a part of me that I had not tapped into since I was in high school. And so, I kept grinding. And, a lot of times we will work ourselves just because, we don't want to face some of the things that we're having to do that we need to deal with, but we won't. And so, yeah, so when I graduated back in 2021, I I was shocked that I was able to do it. Like it wasn't. I was like, but every time I was like, well, this was the plan. This was the plan. So yeah, it was gonna be hard. The plan was I was gonna still go to school while I'm still in. So yeah, this does change nothing. This changes nothing. And so every time it would get hard, that's exactly what I'd say. I was like, well, no, because this was the plan. So how would we do this if we still had the plan? Well, I'd have to do this, isn't it? Then keep moving. And so that's exactly what I did. And so yeah, when I completed it, I was able to go right back to my leadership and go, well, while you guys were waiting to debate if they should send me it, I just got my bachelor's degree. And so they were like, oh, okay, so that's a big deal. And well, yeah, because you can take that degree and use that in the civilian world, whereas the Sergeant Major Academy is just cool on paper. That's about as cool as it gets with that. And National Guard and Army we might as well be wearing two different uniforms. Even though our uniforms say U.S. Army, we don't do nothing like the Army does, and the Army doesn't do anything we do. Like we're like our own. We are like the militia. Like how we're defined as the militia. Yes, we are, because very very little of what we do mimics the active duty. We barely even fill out the same forms, and so it becomes comical when you do, because yeah, we're two completely different, but we wear the same uniform. That's about as the similarity ends right there. So, and I just after that, that's when I decided, I think it is time. I think this has been where I need to start looking for a completely different direction to go. So yeah, when I retired, the biggest part of service, that's why you join the military, and then when you do help people, but then you lack that element that you need. That's exactly where I was like, well, I don't know where to go with this now that I am going to get out. And that's where the Travis Manion Foundation found me. I didn't find them. It was you want to talk about a random email. That's exactly how Travis Manion found me. And the biggest thing that I love about the Travis Manion Foundation is it's service based. You have
Mhm.
a lot of organizations that are they cater, and they kind of like, they want to take care of you in the sense of, hey, get you some discounts, and you want a free trip, or do you want to, oh, you want some tickets to a big ball game, or you want to go to this event over here. And I don't want to be pampered. Some people do, and that's fantastic. I cringe when someone comes up to me and thanks me for my service. I'm like, thanks for the support, because I don't feel like I did anything to warrant such a statement. And so when I crossed over and became civilian, I needed something that gave me that service element back. And that's the biggest thing about the Travis Manion Foundation is service based. They do take care of their volunteers, but they take care of them after they've done so many events, and they recognize them for the things that they've done for their community, and that speaks to me way more than like Taps, who is like the biggest show in town when it comes to survivors. But a lot of the stuff that Taps does is more pampering versus giving me hey, look, we got these people over here that need some help. Do you think you can go out there and clean up their yard, or can you go out there and mow their lawns? Oh yeah. See, now you're talking my language. That's where I want to mow the lawn for someone that's lost somebody. I want to clean their car. Where is that? You give me that, and now that's exactly what I look for. And so that's why I've been there with it for a year now, because and what gives me the ability is the flexibility, is they allow you this open canvas to go, what do you want to do there? Well, I want to help people. Okay, what do you want to help them with? Well, I want to do, okay, well then set it up, and we'll talk budget, and we'll start, like, it's a really, they do give you these open canvases to go, it's your state. What do you want to do for your people? And I'm like, oh, well, I want to go and clean their yard. Okay, we'll set it up and send us the bill. And now we will put that into our budget so that we can figure out how to cover it. And I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now this is exact. And so that's exactly what I do. We've done, I'd say, two big major service projects since we started, and we did two more back in Memorial Day. And so, and those have been the things I'm most proud about, is that I've been able to set those up and execute them here. And I didn't have anybody like go, ooh, that's not kind of what we do. It's been, yep, send us the receipts. We got you. And that's been what speaks to me. And that's just me. I can't speak for everyone else.
That's amazing. So it sounds like a lot of things that have helped kind of keep you going is being able to continue to serve others. And then also the focus on like, hey, this was the plan and I'm still going to execute this plan. Are there other things that you would say were things or maybe uh, things that you did or things that people did, or what were things that kind of helped keep you going and keep you pushing through as you went through this extreme period of loss of so many different things between people and career?
Yeah. So the biggest was um, having I had some close friends, and I have a really close relationship with my sons, that they remind me like, hey, you know, you are into this. Why don't you go that direction? They don't leave me hanging. They come and check on me. They were like, hey, why don't you? And so I have who is now my best friend slash my compadre, my person now, my wife. I've known her for 15 years, and we knew each other from just working together, assignments, then came back, talked. Like, I knew her husband, she knew JJ, my wife, and then things happen, and then like 4 years later, then her stuff falls through. But we constantly kept in contact of just, hey, how's your kids doing? How are And so when it all finally, this long period of going through, uh, you know, finally now she's like, hey, why don't we get together? And it was like, yeah, you know what? I I'm a train wreck. And she was like, not to me or not. And so I was like, man, okay. And so we've been together ever since. And she is very, very, very supportive, and she is always trying to find those things that I key on. And she's like, "Hey, let's go look. Let's set something up for the children's museum, or you ever thought about doing this?" And I'm like, "Oh, you know what? I never even thought about doing. Okay, yeah." And so, my family rebuilt itself. You know, I like to look at death as like, so you have this in the beginning, you have this beautiful sandcastle, and then the water comes and takes it, or it takes half of your sandcastle, and then you're forced to try to find the sand that used to hold it together, and you don't get all that back, and then you try to reform it, and then of course it's not going to look the same. But some of it's together, and you're like, oh well, I got to keep some of it. Yeah, you do. And then life happens, or another wave comes and it takes the other corner out. And so you're constantly trying to, and you're desperate. You reach out and you try to grab all the stuff that you're familiar with and all the things that you've wanted to that made the castle so beautiful. But you can't hold on to all of it. Some of it's just out of your control, and so you rebuild it and you rebuild it, and then you find somebody that gets in there with you, and she puts her hands out there and starts trying to save, not only she's trying to help you save, some of the sand that you love, and then kind of bring in theirs. Like, well, if you can't get it, I'll bring some of mine. Here you go. And then you start rebuilding this castle, and it becomes way better than it ever was, and it's reinforced, and there's now I've got a moat, and I've got some I got some stuff and concertina wire and some guard towers. Now I can protect it. And she's like, hey, I'll take the next watch. And those are the things that we've built to get us to where we're at now. And so now like I said, I'm a completely different person than where I was 5 years ago. And I do believe that find that person. Mine just happened to be you 15 years in the making, but but she knew everything about me. So that's the kind of stuff that I look back now and go, that's my life is so much better now and than what it was because of that event. And so there's a quote that I use. It's not mine, that I completely, it just speaks to me, and it's um, you will you will learn to love the event that you wished never happened,
Mm-hmm.
because for for everything that you lose, sometimes you get something so much better later on. And you don't want to, it just like, oh, I'd give anything to have that person back, or I'd give anything not to have to go through that. But then we wouldn't be where we are now. We wouldn't be the people that we are. We'd be in a completely different direction. And you have to take that minute to look back and go, oh, that's a tough one, because I don't want, I don't, if you give me the opportunity, but then I wouldn't be where I'm at right now, and I wouldn't be with the people, and I wouldn't have the things that I have. So it's one of the toughest realizations I've had to deal with when moving forward, is like, I have a beautiful life, and it took a hailstorm and a lot of the ocean taking away what I felt was beautiful. But right now I'm in a really good place.
That's
So
awesome. You also have really great analogies that are a beautiful way to picture the things that you've been through in life and how regaining and, like you said, rebuilding that sandcastle. I think that's such a beautiful analogy that many people can relate to. Well, we're coming to the end of our episode, and this has been an amazing conversation talk. I really appreciate you being here. I want to give you a minute to kind of recap or leave us with some final thoughts or nuggets of wisdom.
nuggets of wisdom. What a great word, nuggets, because that's it's debatable. But I I talk when I talk to the kids, a lot of times I have this. I present them with the the potato and the egg, and I love to do this one. And because it has, to me, it kind of defines a lot of the stuff that I've been through and a lot of things that we go through on a regular basis. But I'll show them. I present a potato, and they're like, I go, what is this? And they're like, well, it's a potato. I go, do they come in different shapes and sizes and colors? They're like, oh yeah. And I go, yes, they do. And so I'll put it down and I'll grab an egg and I go, what is this? And they're like, well, it's an egg. I go, do they come in different sizes, colors, shapes? And they're like, yeah. And I go, but what's inside of it, it's still the same, right? No matter what color and the dynamic of the egg, it's still an egg, right? And they're like, yeah. I go, okay. When I take those two and I put them into boiling water, what is the outcome? And they go, well, the potato gets soft and the egg gets hard. I go, yeah. And so if you want to relate that to life, what is it that I just told you? And they just kind of they phase out. And I go, well, the same boiling water that will soften a potato will also harden an egg. It's not your circumstances that's going to define you. It's what you're made of. And the light bulb goes on like, oh, that's deep. And so I leave that with that because a lot of times we get wrapped up in the things that we can't control. And that's the boiling water. That's what we're dealing with on a regular basis. And a lot of times we let that water just take a hold of us, and we're like, well, if I didn't have that or I didn't have this, no, you have the ability and the strength inside of you to keep going. You're gonna be able to do it. But you gotta remember that. You gotta look at yourself and go, man, I got this. I know that's you're letting the water um, define you when you should be looking at yourself like, oh no, I can make it through this. I'm an egg or I'm a potato. Like I don't care if you're the potato or the egg. Either way, it doesn't matter. The circumstances are still gonna be the same. So don't let those things that define you when you've had it the whole time.
Another amazing analogy that I think a lot of people, like you said, are also going to have that light bulb, both youth and adults. So thank you so much again for being here, sharing your story. I really appreciate it because again, I don't think enough people are talking about this. And the more we talk about it, the less we make it taboo and the more likely we can help other people.
Absolutely.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you found this episode inspiring, please share it with someone you never know who needs more light in their life. May this serve as a reminder that there's always darkness in the world. Do not let it consume you. Always seek the light. Please take a moment to do the good old subscribe, rate, and review. Your support means so much to me, and it helps me spread more light and love. Until next time, be kind, be loving, be human, and don't ever let anyone steal your hope.